so apparently immigration and helping unaccompanied minors was not the best example maybe to use in South Carolina. So know my context. We have people here, Elliot, for example, and other folks. How many of you work with social service agencies down here? Okay. Yeah, you work with at hospice. Is there one issue where South Carolinians, where that would not seem to be an overtly political thing? For example, hunger ministries. Do we do things like with that down here? Yeah. Okay, so then you use that as an example with your people, if that's better. One congregation could probably take care of all the hungry people in South Carolina. But working with, together as congregations, but also with social service agencies, not just feeding people, but helping those people find their way to employment and sustainability. That's not something that a single congregation can do, but it's something that we can do as the church together. But I wouldn't let up on the immigration reform ones. I just had this story. You told me, the campus pastor here, that there are some Latino missions in what city?
Lexington County, or Lexington, West Columbia.
West Columbia, and they're doing pretty well. But is he a former Lutheran, or is he still a Lutheran?
No,
former Lutheran sheriff parks police cruisers around the outsides of churches in order to pick up undocumented people. So it's an interesting. Okay, so we won't. So fine. If you want to use an example of how we work together, we do more together than we can individually. Then maybe if that's too much if people won't be able to hear the message because they get caught up on a particular issue, find something else. And I would talk with your social service agency folks because it's pretty robust down here. The work they do. Lutheran disaster response is something. Those of you who went through Floyd, I mean, they imported. I still have my shirt, but they imported us from the north. Youth groups from the north. We came down here twice to work in. Where's the News River? North Carolina. But that's where we were with Floyd. We were up there, so that was affected too. So, and people, Bishop Hansen we always tell the story. So he was in some airport someplace, which they all look alike pretty much. I've discovered. And all the food is the same. Everything's artificial in airports. It's just an interesting life. Anyways, he was there dressed in his bishop outfit, and he must have been having his purple shirt on, which is a raging controversy amongst the Conference of Bishops. That's an inside joke. It's pretty funny, but it's their tradition in a lot of parts of the world for Lutherans that in other bishops, and if you're a bishop, you wear a purple shirt. It's a case now with Episcopalians in this country always, but I'm sure that Bishop Yost took his purple shirt to be with the people in Tanzania because they recognized. So he was in his purple shirt, and this woman crossed, I don't know where they were, someplace in the airport. She looks at him and says, "Hey, are you a bishop?" And he said, "Well, yes." She says, "Well, what kind?" He said, "Lutheran." "We love Lutherans." He's like, "Oh, that's so nice to hear." So, yeah. And he said, "Well, why?" "Who are you?" Well, she was with FEMA, and she said, "When Luther disaster, we're not first responders. That's not our role. But when we come, we don't leave until the job is done. So we're there for years." And so that might be a story, particularly with Hurricane Floyd, that caused the flooding and the damage, to say, no one congregation can do the work that we can do as a church together.
Or Hurricane Hugo, which is much closer to our heart. Yeah.
I worked on Hurricane Hugo. Where was I? Did that affect North Carolina?
Yeah, that's probably.
Oh, yeah.
I was in Charleston. I was in Charleston. I was there. We were working. We did work. Then one place, we were in Fort Folly Island. Folly Beach. We worked down there. That's right. And the wind had moved the beach to the other side of the road.
Yeah.
It was a mess. So yeah, we worked at Hugo.
We had a lot of people from Ohio.
You know why? Because it's cold in Ohio. So the youth movement of the last congregation, we were in Ashtabula. So if you're ever watching the Weather Channel, and they talk about the snow belts and lake effect snow, that would be us. So what happens is that before the lake freezes over, if the front comes over that picks up the moisture from the lake, and when it hits land in Ashtabula and Buffalo, and that way it dumps all the snow. So all winter long, our kids would watch the Weather Channel, hoping for hurricanes, and CNN. And then that's where we would know we were going. And we would go south. We were in July in Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina, Mississippi in July. Yeah. So, okay. I digress. So, that's something we were talking about, and I will quickly move on, because when does this segment end, Pastor Shannon? No one. No, we're not going until 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, we are. Did you get that lightsaber?
The bishop.
I'll repeat the questions if we can't go.
That was Keith's idea to give you this. It's a bad idea, Keith.
If you get on buses, this is okay. Church for the sake of the world. So, if we just keep all of this, the love and the transformation that we've experienced in Christ to ourselves, that's not being faithful. It's not scriptural. It's not being faithful. And we do show up in a lot of places around the world. Bishop Yos was just telling me about the water projects that you're doing with people over there in Tanzania, where for the first time they have fresh water. They're all drinking out of the same water project, the South Carolinians as well as the Tanzanians. And now Bishop Yos says that maybe the government might be taking a look at how this happens. And that's also happening with our malaria campaign, that it's clear that the Lutheran churches understand how to deliver the education, the prevention, the medication, the nets, and so the government's partnering with the Lutheran churches in those countries. So we do that, but we do it in a particular way that we've gotten some heat about. We talk about accompaniment, that we're not just going over there as the great white saviors, perpetrating good works on unsuspecting natives. That the churches, I mean, I got pushback when we were engaged in the malaria campaign in my former synod. Somebody once said, why are we doing that? There are government and other secular agencies that could probably provide a whole lot more money. The church should be about baptizing. That's what uniquely belongs to us. And so I took a breath, didn't respond right away. Took a breath, and I said, well, let me tell you, the church over there is growing faster than ours, and they're baptizing people at a far greater rate than we are. That's the reality, at least in a lot of those synods in this global south. But they just asked that the newly baptized might live. So. That was not my best moment. But it felt kind of good at the time. Just to think that somehow that we're bringing this base of knowledge, or even bringing the faith to our companions around the world, is really not the way we do mission work. We understand. Who do you have former Yagams as family members? Yeah. Or you were Yagams. You don't bring God where God already is. That's the mantra. So, and that's the case. We have as much to learn from people who are our companions as we maybe have to give, and vice versa. So it's a companion and accompaniment model. I had a woman who went here to go to visit our companions in the northern diocese of southern Africa, ELCA, and she said, well, we'll be going into the bush. I said, they have a better road system than we do. It doesn't have the freeze and thaw cycle that we have up in Ohio. So just, if your companion synod was, say, Paris, would you be talking the same way? So we try to look at this accompaniment. There are more Lutherans in Indonesia than there are in the United States. There are more Lutherans in Tanzania than there are in the United States. Korea is overwhelmingly a Christian country, mostly Presbyterian. So just this notion that we are the only ones who have something to give to people who are clients is not the way that we do our the work that we do as church together. And we really do try to take the lead from our companion churches over there. And we have asked in a number of synods, can you send some people over here so we might learn how you do things like training lay evangelists, lay catechists, lay preachers. In a lot of places where we have companion synods, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa or the global south, they don't have one pastor for every congregation. Well, that's pretty much the same thing here. We can't do that because congregations can't afford it. We form into these clusters. But they've trained evangelists, catechists, and preachers pretty rigorously so that the ministry can continue on with one ordained person. So we're taking a look at that. How many? Where did you serve?
In England.
You were in England. So you got Time for God.
Yeah.
Where? I think we went through this already. Where on earth is that?
It's about an hour north of London.
So an hour north of London. See, this is another thing. My daughter, Rebecca, served in Bath, England. And her husband now, Michael, in whose wedding Elliot was, and Michael was in Elliot's wedding. Where did Elliot go? There he is back there, yay! Elliot and Michael served in South Africa. Michael was in Soweto. Where were you, Elliot? Alexandra. And so we send these young people over, usually right out of college, but I think you have to be like 21 up to the age of 29, and they spend a year living in context, living simply, walking in this accompaniment model, which is it's phenomenal. And then when this class returned this year, we have 500 YAGM, that's the little acronym, YAGM alums, all in that 20 to 30 something age bracket that we covet in our churches. Now, wonderful thing is about 30% of those folks go on to seminary to become in public ministry, either the lay rosters or ordained, so word and service or word and sacrament. But equally wonderful is that 70% don't. So here we have 70% of 500 young adults who love Jesus, have spent a year seeing the world, serving the church. How do we welcome those folks as leaders back into our congregations? We're not doing that so well. That's been a struggle for a lot of them when they come back. So it's our answer to the Mormons, only better clothes. So that's what advice goes. But this being a YAGM in England, I don't know. Sometimes Becca said that the England YAGMs felt like they were like the stepchildren of everyone else because we were going into the bush or some places which really were kind of tough. We've got people in Rwanda this year, which is actually one of the faster growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa right now. But so I said, Becca, Bath, England? Bath, England? What do you do? Drink tea and watch Pride and Prejudice all day long? What do you do? And it's England, Juliet of Norwich, and C.S. Lewis, and you think of all these great, Thomas à Becket. And she said, well, no, Mommy, actually, only 5% of people in this country have any ongoing relationship with any faith community, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, or Jewish. So it's a very secularized culture, and you probably can regale us with stories as well. She tells a story on Good Friday. I mean, you have prom here on Good Friday. They had a crosswalk. So she served in the Abbey, and then they're outlying smaller congregations, and on Good Friday they were to walk through Bath with crosses and stop for prayer along the way, and then all meet up there in front of the Abbey. And she said when they were doing that, people would either stare at them or laugh. Not out loud, and some people had no idea what this was. So it's a mission field there as well. And it's a pretty old civilization there in England. So, and that's happening in this country as well. We're I don't know, the mega churches give us a complex here, but even those movements are starting to show plateauing. So how are we understanding we're a mission field as well, overseas? But that's what we do for the sake of the world. Whether the world is the world in the neighborhood immediately surrounding where we've been planted in our congregations, or agencies, institutions, colleges, universities, etc., or if it's work that we do church to church or around the world, and we receive from them. And we do it. I think, yes, sorry, go ahead, please.
I'm going to change the topic a little bit.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm an associate ministry, and there are just a few of us around here. We kind of sort of know what we do. I'm not sure anyone else does. We keep hearing rumors that there's going to be changes in the roster, that we might be eliminated, grandfathered, ordained, but no one's getting eliminated.
There's
okay. Well, I'd kind of like to hear if there is some thought on that.
okay. So we could why don't we just do questions and stuff like that? I don't know if I have the answers, but we can find them if we don't.
I didn't know if this was the time for that.
Let's start that. So yes, we've been looking at we have the word and sacrament roster, the ordained roster, and then we have 3 lay rosters, which makes us. It sounds like we're a baseball team. This is the pitching. Well, that would be a rotation, whatever. So we inherited this. We inherited deaconesses and what did we used to call them in the LCA? They weren't associates in ministry. Lay professionals. And there were some of that some folks who came from the ALC, they had their own terminology. And then with all of the school teachers that came with the AELC congregations from the Missouri tradition. And we had a study on ministry early on in the church, because we did not get this settled when we came together as the ELCA. And we have very different, I think there's several ecclesiologies, and as well as pieties in the ELCA. So we couldn't agree on this. And when bishops were relatively new, we'd only been calling our presidents bishops, like when, since the mid-70s, yeah, so that was, what do we think about that? And then call to common mission, what are we doing? Those Episcopalians, everyone got the willies about the Episcopalians, and then you get the Haugians out there, and the Dakotas, who just, they have a suspicion of anybody who's ordained anyways. So here we have this whole mishmash of people who are now we're calling it, we're going to be calling it, it looks like. Nothing's been decided because the church has to vote in assembly, so nothing's been decided. One lay roster, which will be the word and service roster. So people who are deaconesses, diaconal ministers, or associates in ministry would all be part of that one instead of keeping 3 lists of people. The problem now, or the challenge, half full or half empty, is what is going to be the reception right, we don't have a right actually, but for those people onto that roster. And for the people who are already there, into what will they be grandparented, if that's, however that's going to look. So some people would say, if you take a look, St. Stephen, they hauled him aside and laid hands on him and prayed for the Holy Spirit, and he became a deacon. So for some people, ordaining deacons, ordaining presbyters or pastors, and ordaining bishops seems to be something that happened since the early church. And other people say that's absolutely not part of our Lutheran DNA, we're not going to go there. So we don't know what that's going to look like. There have been no decisions made on what the reception of those people onto the roster, either when they're coming right out of seminary to the word and service roster, or if you're already part of that, what will that mean? We didn't reinstall bishops when we were or reordained pastors when we had the agreement with the Episcopal Church. So we don't know, and that's going to be a tough one for the church. I'm hoping we put that off until 2019 or later, and then I don't have to worry about that. Hopefully by then I'll have grandchildren. Back then, like, oh, it is. But it's a potentially extremely divisive thing. So how do we do this so it's not Chicago? People have already said to me, well, we know you've all made decisions. I need to pick any number of issues, and you're just going to make us do this, and this is just a big sham, which is not true.
But who do you think is struggling with this? Because I'm not sure that it's those of us on the lay roster that are struggling.
No, but I would say whole segments of the church, particularly in Region 3, this would be the tipping point for them to say, I can't be part of this church anymore. If you're going to ordain these people. Yeah, that's exactly right. But if you take a look at it though, what do we? If you line up, if you had people watch a consecration, a commissioning, or an ordination, they would all look to be exactly the same thing. But
We're not get as many hands.
well, I used 2. I didn't know you were supposed to use any fewer. If I had 3, I would have done that too. That would be something. So it's just, I have no problem with that. I'm former LCA, East Coast. That's fine. It's not going to affect our salvation. I think it would be consistent with large parts of Christianity. But other people, particularly the folks who come from the Haugian pietist tradition, who were oppressed by bishops, would say, don't you dare add one more condition for service here. Then you're chipping away at our notion that it's grace alone, and there are these other things that are constructs of human beings that need to be applied in order for us to be really church or whatever. And you forget arguing about Newberry or Lenore Ryan. So the deaconess community, the LCA is trying to understand how would they fit into there. So if you're a deaconess, then are you no longer a deaconess? Would you be called a deacon? How is whatever name we're going to give to that, which we haven't decided yet, just to be clear. We haven't decided yet. Because they believe they have I said, well, maybe you could, I was just talking to Sister Janet Stump, she's the head of the deaconess community. I said, maybe all deaconesses might be deacons or word and service, but not all word and service people are deaconesses. Maybe you are a religious community within this roster, we call it. I don't dare call it an order because people really get bent out of shape about it. So are you ordained. We're a list too.
That's all the wrong.
It's a list. We're just lists. Yeah. So yeah, I'm sensing this is a painful discussion for you and yeah. So,
I don't want to be an associate of anything, that's just a weird word for me.
yes,
I'm an executive director, you know, and so for me, trying to explain to someone who's not Lutheran what this AIM is a little odd.
Explain to most Lutherans in South Carolina, we don't have a clue.
well, you're right, so we don't have a name. And unfortunately, I think it's often seen, and how often do people say, geez, you're really good at that. Why don't you become a pastor? All the time.
Always be a real pastor.
A real pastor. And then, the last staff I worked with, we had a deaconess and an associate ministry as well as a couple of clergy folks. And they were very clear. They did not sense a call to word and sacrament ministry. And that was just, and then, for a lot of us who are ordained, it's like, well, how can you not? I don't get it. But I did get it. It took me a while. But that's not how they feel they've been called. But they do feel called to public ministry in the church, which is not some sort of second-class, hand-me-down sort of thing. However, we do have a number of folks on the Word and Service roster who want to then be authorized to be doing Word and Sacrament ministry. Well, then I would say get ordained if you're going to do that. Word and Service is a particular charism or a call that's sensed by people who lived out in service. It's important. My Episcopal colleague in Cleveland said he wished that his deacons, and they're usually transitional deacons, which is kind of goofy anyways. I just the Episcopal Methodist, Roman Catholic, and Orthodox churches there. So anyways, he says he wishes the deacons who are perpetual deacons would understand the importance of their ministry, that one of the most important things that we hear at the end of the worship is go in peace, serve the Lord, and be sent out into the community, church for the sake of the world. And we haven't figured that one out. And I like people once said they're bishops, pastors, presbyters, and deacons. And I say, no, in the Episcopal system, there are four orders. They're lay people, deacons, presbyters or pastors, and bishops. And why don't we see that we're all serving side by side? That's what we're trying to work on. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I should make, if
Yeah,
I
and
may
hopefully
just
we'll
chime
get
in.
something from the ELCA on that, because we've heard nothing.
Well, your bishop hears regular updates at every conference of bishops' meetings. And so he can find a way. Now, you can speak to that and then let's see, but then, not to throw my brother under the bus completely, because you're all complicit too. I knew in the parish that my desk is where everything went to die. And it's the same thing in the conference of bishops. We hear about everything. And then we get back and we've got other stuff to do. So it's like he's not trying to withhold information. And if you go on the ELCA website, which we know we're working on because it's impossible to find things on there. We're working on it. We're working on it. We've heard the cries of the people. We've heard the cries. There's also regular updates on that. So, and if you just pick up the phone and call us, we'll get you to the right person. If you want to find out what's going on with the Word and Service, a study about that and the roster. And in fact, there have been ELCA news releases. Like, you call us up, call Greg Villallone, or just say you want to find it. We will get you to that person, and we will answer we even answer our own phones sometimes. So one time Violet, my executive assistant, she was down the hall. That's our euphemism, she's down the hall. So I just answer the phones. We do that. We're not this monolith of people who want to block information. Now, wait a minute. Traffic direction, here.
Just to speak to this too, at the Conference of Bishops, and when all the vice presidents got together, we got our Region 9 together, so all of the bishops in Region 9 and the vice presidents in Region 9 got together and talked about this, and we asked Dr. Susan McCarver to come over. She's been asked, who's at Southern Seminary, Dr. Susan McCarver has been asked to be on this task force committee who's discussing all of this. The part, and I echo what Elizabeth just said as well, that not only constitutionally, initially, does that have to change, which has to go by a vote by church council, so it isn't.
And the churchwide assembly.
And which would then, well, that's 15 would be the constitutional, and then 16, if it's ready to be there, then it would be voted on by churchwide assembly in 2016 as well. But the point in that is, Deborah, are you serving also on this right now?
No, but I get the letters from them.
I have another one.
And Amy, if you're not getting the letters, fine, because Deborah and I are, after they meet on this, because we do want to try to increase communication but reduce the anxiety. And so I share this because I don't want any of us to think, that maybe something's happening or being decided or whatnot, and that there is no say-so. They are trying to get information. This team is to try and help and advise.
I'm out of this completely, but there must be some email list out there, because everything the presiding bishop said, I read in a news release months ago. So if you aren't aware of it, then
You can
there's
subscribe to
some-
the ELCA news service.
Yeah, then there
And what,
must be.
Scott, are there other ways?
Well, I'm an aide
Scott's an
too.
associate with this.
And we have been getting emails directly, so if whoever's over there didn't get it, maybe your email address just didn't get it on the right list.
Yeah, there's an email
Double
list.
check that.
There's some sort of email list you should be on that's out there, because everything you said, I read on an email.
Did I get it right?
Yes. No, I read everything you said, I read in an email months ago. Yes.
Okay, then someone over. Did that answer, this question answered? Yes, please.
New question. We
Okay.
had you earlier on a video concerning the ELCA campaign. Could you say a few words about the ELCA campaign?
I think I better. I'm not allowed to go back to Chicago. Okay, yeah. At the 2013 Churchwide Assembly, we voted to embark on a comprehensive campaign of close to $200 million, $198 million. It was supposed to be $190 million, I think, but we added $8 million on the floor of the Assembly. $4 million of it was responsibility of this synod, so well done, you. So, yeah. So we had this, and the buckets are congregations, so new starts as well as congregational renewals. So we're trying to raise funds for that. For leadership, so fund for leaders, for seminarians, as well as international women's scholars. We always have scholarships with our companion synods, and we say nominate somebody. They overwhelmingly always send men. But we know that women have huge impacts on their communities in those places in the world, so then we say, we'll give those scholarships to the men, but we are now going to identify women as well. So international women's scholars. We have Global Mission, which is our young adults in Global Mission. We had I think this year, 160 applicants for 60-some positions, or maybe 120 for 60-some positions. So there's, we left half of the applicants who could not be part of this. So we want to grow that up to having 100 young adults in service every year and expanding the country. So that's another piece of that, as well as our global mission personnel. And then another part is hunger and poverty. So our hunger relief, that component to grow that, as well as finishing out the malaria campaign, has also been folded into that. And we are just shy of $13 million in the malaria campaign, and our goal was $15 million. So those are the main areas. And then, from the initiative of some people here in South Carolina, I heard the story how this came together. Shannon was telling me that the young adults really felt, why aren't we part of this campaign if this is an important component of the church? And instead of just trying to raise it from the floor, they did work with the Reference and Council Committee. And your staff, your church-wide staff, worked with these young people to make, they didn't try to block it, they tried to make it happen. And the kids were amazingly organized. It was brilliant. They had their Twitter feed, I don't know if they had a Facebook page as well, Facebook and Twitter, hashtag Are You With Us, and they met every night, they worked really hard, brought this forward, and we as a church said, yeah, that makes sense. We need to do something. We don't know what we're going to do. I'll speak to that in a minute. But we passed another $4 million. Well, right after that, a pastor, I forget whose synod he was from, and he's a differently abled pastor, gets up and says, we really need $4 million for disability ministries. Well, how are you going to say no to that? Somebody else said, yes, okay, we can do that. At which point, Susan Johnson, who's the national bishop of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Canada, who was a guest, just stopped short of standing up and said, the Canadians can use $2 million.